A lot of it was complete baloney. What is the point of saying you want privacy and doing things in a different way and then just it being all about you? I think if she got involved in American politics with the title the Duchess of Sussex, she'd be eaten alive.
Hello, I'm Matt Wilkinson, The Sun's Royal Editor, and welcome to our show, Royal Exclusive. With me today is royal author and journalist Rob Jobson.
Hi, Matt.
Good. Listen, last week on this show, before the Sussexes went to Colombia, we spoke about it appearing to be vague and possibly just a vanity project for the Duchess of Sussex and the Vice President of Colombia to appear on lots of front pages of newspapers. Now we've had this tour, did it have any more substance than that, or do you think that analysis is correct?
Well, it's broadly correct, but I think it had a bit more substance. I think they tried to give it the impression of being a quasi-royal tour. They had elements of the politics side of things, they had elements of the caring for young kids and all this sort of stuff. There was a bit of issues such as diversity and treatment of women and all those. But yeah, look, at the end of the day, what I don't understand is if Meghan and Harry want to do royal tours or quasi-royal tours, why they didn't stick around doing it properly, because then they would have been doing it for the king and for the country, and Harry's always banging on about how important that is to him. So if they wanted to carry on doing this stuff, I don't know why they didn't stay.
Well, I don't want to dwell on the Colombia tour too much, but isn't that the point? It's like this tour was about Meghan. She was at the front of this. We had her wardrobe. I think we had, 10 different outfits in 4 days, £90,000 worth of clothes. She was the one that was always pictured looking happy, speaking Spanish. Harry looked a bit grumpy at times, I think, off camera or off the set pictures that came out. He looked a little bit
She
like...
could have had all that anyway, Matt. We were both, I was down in, when she went to Tonga, and Fiji and all these places in Australia. She had a very good press there, and there were lots of changing of outfits. And even in South Africa, they had a pretty reasonable tour. I think it was bad in terms of the other things that were going on. So what I don't understand is what is the point of saying you want privacy and doing things in a different way, and then just it being all about you rather than doing it to help your country and serve.
Well, she said, she had a press conference on the opening day of the tour, the Vice President, and she said the reason they were invited was that she had heard their story on Netflix. I mean, that surprised me, that she didn't seem to know, or she seemed to base the entire invite on a 6-part documentary, which we know quite a bit of it was kind of a little bit kind of fast and loose with the truth and representation of the UK.
Fast and loose with the truth, a lot of it was complete baloney. But the reality is that I think that this was a chance for the government of Colombia that's not been doing too great to be put on a sideshow, take away, have a distraction from the problems they're facing at home.
There's a couple of things I want to pull out of this tour that has kind of been underreported, I think. There's on the final day in Cali, at a forum that they attended, Meghan was with the president of the Open Society Foundation. Now, this is an organisation I'm not aware of in the UK. I think people might know about it in America, but it's a huge funder of left-wing political causes around the world, and also the Democrats in the United States. Is or was Meghan trying to get involved in politics? Is she positioning herself, do you think, with this big display with the Vice President of Colombia front and centre? Is she forcing her way into kind of American politics now?
I think if she got involved in American politics with the title the Duchess of Sussex, she'd be eaten alive. I think she may think that she's got the wherewithal to make it. I think a lot of the Democrats would run a mile. Didn't they have a war to get rid of the British royals in America? I think really, if you want to be a serious politician, then just go by the name of Meghan Markle. But I don't think she's got the clout or the background to be a serious politician.
I don't think she would be able to take the criticism or the scrutiny. Would be one of the things I think with Meghan.
I just don't think. I mean, it's a dirty game.
Yeah. And
I think that if she thinks she's been treated badly by the British press, then I think that there's going to be an awful lot worse if you enter the world of politics in America.
Well, let's see what happens in the next couple of months as the US election, is on the horizon. There's another element, and it might be just in a media bubble, but last week we spoke about, tongue-in-cheek, said they could accept an invite from anywhere. Would they accept an invite from North Korea, for instance? But from speaking to people on the ground, there were certain restrictions on the press. So all the pictures that came out were from an agreed photographer. There was rotocopy that was sent out, that came out via the Archwell team, and it was quite mundane. There wasn't anything exciting in it. There weren't very many quotes from people who had met the couple or anything like that. And the videos that were presented from this trip were silent, and some were suggesting was that because there weren't many cheers, or there were comments coming out. But I joked about North Korea last week, but the restrictions on the press, the control that Archwell had on this tour would make Kim Jong-un blush, to be honest.
Yeah, but I mean, this is exactly what we expected. I mean, the reality is they don't like criticism. The people around them, the trolls and all these morons, they don't like criticism. They give it out, but they can't take it. And you can't really say that you are into open politics, free speech and things like that if you're controlling every step. It's a little bit strange, to be honest. But it reminds me, like going to having a tour where you can't have any criticism or free press reporting on it. It's a bit like what happened with the 1938 when the Duke and Duchess of Windsor went to Nazi Germany to look at the housing projects. It was all controlled by the Nazis who were pumping out their propaganda. I'm not comparing the Colombian government to the Nazis or even Meghan and Harry. What I'm saying is that you do need a free press. I know that the Royal Rota comes under attack for being supine, I think it was been described. But it's by journalists like yourself and me that will watch things and see things, speak and interview people and report on what's actually happening. So look, my feeling is it was just a PR puff.
It was a PR puff, and it was quite a successful PR puff because they got
nothing else was going on. I mean, they picked the time of August because they knew they wouldn't clash with anything else, really.
But it remains vague to me, the reasons for going. It totally does.
Self-promotion, simple as that.
For the couple and but we don't know really.
And distraction for Colombia about all the nonsense that's going on there. There's a lot of problems in Colombia. The government have been getting a lot of criticism. It gives them a chance to sort of, to have a distraction from their problems.
Finally, on the Sussexes, where next do you think they could end up?
Well, it's difficult to say. I mean, as you say, North Korea, Russia, I don't know. The reality is I think that they'll have to wait and be invited because, if they want to do it on that scale where you're involving political figures, it needs to be a personal connection. I think they need to work out what they want to do. They don't come across as particularly authentic. If you are trying to rebuild your reputation, they've just lost their CEO and they seem to not be able to hang on to staff. I think you've got to stop build from the bottom and not have these grand moments. Just do things that are authentic and do things that are real rather than sort of staged with, loads of different outfit changes. Just do some real work in America maybe and people won't start to believe you.
Okay. Well, let's move on to something which I think is very worthwhile. The King, has gone to Southport. And we get a lot of US viewers, so I just want to explain what happened. A couple of weeks ago, 3 children were killed at a Taylor Swift-themed party. It was a huge atrocity in the UK and made lots of coverage. Led to some street riots in the UK. Led to some disorder. So the King has gone to Southport. He has met some of the families and children who were there when this happened. He's met some of the 999 heroes, and in London he's meeting some of the families of the 3 bereaved children. This is a huge moment for the King, a very important step. This is what the King should be doing, right?
Well, the King's coming up to the 2nd anniversary of his reign, and I think he's well established now. I think this is the sort of thing he should be doing. Yeah, he is the head of state, but he's also the head of nation. He's there to unify the nation. And after this, frankly, heinous crime, there was a lot of disorder, a lot of misinformation that led to that disorder as well, actually. And I think it's quite important that the King has a role that is to unify people and to try to bring them together. But he'll also be meeting the bereaved families, which is going to be very emotional. I think it's going to be private in London. But the the point of it is that's part of his role, and I think it's absolutely right that he does it. And he's a very compassionate man. Someone I think that, you know, you've met him, I've known him many years, and I think that he's somebody that has a great empathy with people, particularly in difficult situations like this.
Yeah, too right. I mean, he's broken off his holiday. He only started his holiday this week, officially up at Balmoral, but he's broken off his holiday.
Well, it's very important, I think, and he will see that. And, you know, he was quite alarmed by the disorder that followed. He issued statements about that. And I think he's basically, you know, showing that he really does care about the country and the people who live within it. And he's spent most of his life and his working life trying to work for closer relations, interfaith relations, community relations. And he would have been, you know, horrified at seeing some of the things that were happening on the streets. And it's a tinderbox, you know, and that's something he's fully aware.
I think it's thoroughly important that the King does this kind of stuff. If you remember Grenfell, again, for any US viewers, this was an incident where a housing block caught fire and there were so many tragic deaths. And I remember Theresa May, who was the Prime Minister at the time, went there and to visit the community, and she got booed and jeered and had to leave. The Queen went there. The late Queen went there, and that kind of changed all the atmosphere. Yeah. They have a certain power, don't they? Yeah, they do. There's a sort of a sense of this, there's an awe about the royal family, actually, and a sense of deference that's still there. But it's not so much that, it's that they are not political, they're not there to take the blame for the shortcuts that were taken and the politicians have to face. But they're trying, I think, and the King in particular has always tried to build to be supporting a harmonious society, a diverse and loving society where people can live together in harmony. And he's always worked very hard for that. And, you know, it would have been really quite disturbing that all the things that were going on for him, I think. I mentioned a minute ago that he was having a summer break up at Balmoral. It's just over 6 months ago that he announced that he was diagnosed with cancer. He's back on his feet now. We're going to Australia. Me and you will be in Australia in October. Looking forward to it. He's back on his feet now. I've written a story saying that, you know, almost like praising the royal household and praising the King about how they've managed to get to this stage where it was all doom and gloom back in February and March, and now we're kind of looking forward and a little bit of optimism. How do you think the King's got on over the last 6 months with this huge challenge of cancer? Well, the King is a bit of a workaholic, and I think that he's probably doing too much. I think that the Queen, Camilla, is keen for him to do less. I think he should listen to her. But he is somebody that doesn't stop. You know, on the occasions like this, you know, with the Southport, he's made sure that he's going to do what his duty. And I think there's part of it is that he realises that, you know, becoming the oldest king to ascend to the throne, his time will be limited, and he wants to make his mark not only as the Prince of Wales previously, but as king. And, you know, I think now we're through the transition, and that's what he wants to do. I personally would like to see him doing a little bit less, because, you know, with anything to do with cancer, it can change quite quickly, and stress is a difficult thing. But we know that the King is somebody that will always put duty first. Have you noticed, say, many years you've been reporting on the King, have you noticed any dramatic changes, or maybe no changes really, in the time when he was Prince of Wales, when you would go on tour with him all around the world and engagements in the UK, and then since he's become king? We've been to France with him, into Germany with him since he became king, and Dubai we've been with him since he's become king. I think the edge, you know, he used to have a bit of an edge about him, the King, in terms of what he was trying to say. Often his speeches were quite dramatic in terms of saving the planet. They weren't necessarily listened to in the way that they are now. When he was in Dubai, he spoke brilliantly, I thought. You reported on it, and it was, you know, it went around the world. I think he's more accepting of himself and his role now, whereas before I think he was always fighting, you know, to be heard. At the moment, I think he now realises that as king, he has a voice, but he has to be more careful in what he says. And I think he's actually slotted into the role as monarch far easier. There was used to be all this conjecture about, what sort of king will he be? Will he be a meddling king? Well, no, as he said, you know, like the Shakespeare play, Henry V, his favourite play,
you know, there's a very different role from being Prince Hal to being King Henry V. You know, they're two different jobs. And I think he has shown a great command of understanding of what that role is. A lot of people have certainly warmed to him as monarch. And, you know, that feeling that there was going to be a lot of energy, anti-criticism of him that may have been around, you know, before he became king, it just didn't happen. And I think he's really, you know, settled in the role. Yes, there's a lot of sympathy with the cancer. I just hope, as I said earlier, that I think that he probably needs to do a bit less and take things a little bit easier.
Yeah, we'll get on to some tough decisions the King might have to make later in the show, or some decisions that he's currently making later in the show. But I just want to speak about the Princess of Wales. Your book, doing very well, I understand, bestseller in many, many countries. It's Catherine, Princess of Wales. Can we talk about Catherine for a little bit? We haven't seen her for much this year. You've done an awful lot of research into her life, wonderful book. How do you think she's coped over the last six months? What's your impression of the Princess of Wales right now? Well,
I started writing the book actually at the behest of the publishers in 2021, and then obviously a lot of things changed. I even published a different book in the meantime, Our King. I think that we've seen her twice, you know, and she got a standing ovation at Wimbledon. We saw her with the children at Trooping, the colour. She too is going to take things day by day. I think that there will be a change. I think that she's realised, as anybody with any serious condition and having to have treatment will always realise when they're faced with their mortality, what really matters to them. And what really matters to her is her husband and her children, and making sure that her children are ready for what's coming next for them. You know, and nobody can then take for granted how long you've got in this life. So I think that's probably been a big, something that's huge in her life. And her main priority will be to focus on George, you know, obviously Charlotte and Louis too, but making sure George is ready for his role. And we are in a different world now to the early days of Diana, William and Harry as little boys. It's a very different place. You know, there was far more deference, even going back in time when Elizabeth became the Queen. You know, this is somebody that understands the people. She went to work in a double-decker bus. Her grandfather was a painter and decorator. I know she was very privileged, but the reality is she does understand when people have got mortgages to pay. No matter how way you look at, say, William or Charles or anybody, or even our own children, they will never have to worry about a mortgage payment. They will never have to worry about their career prospects. They won't. They just won't. So having that understanding of being amongst people is very important, I think, for the monarchy, because the monarchy will have to undergo, I think, a seismic shift, actually, over the next 50 years. You know, will there be any realms? Will there be a head of state in Australia, New Zealand, Canada? Probably not. And so the royal family will have to adjust to that going forward. And that, I think, is a role that she will have to play an important role in, because supporting William, making sure children are prepared for what's next is crucial. Probably she will carry on, I think, doing her work with early years. But I think that if we talk about her going forward, will there be a whole series of events set out for the next 6 to 8 months for the press to pore over? I think that would be a very poor way of doing it, because if she didn't turn up for a job in September, we'd all be saying, oh, is there a problem with her? Has she got issues? So they're going to have to handle this quite well. And the PR team are going to have to be on their best game on this, because, you know, they didn't handle that whole business of the pictures very well at all. She ended up getting criticism when I think it was their fault. And I think really the bottom line is that they're going to have to handle the whole thing in a far more sympathetic and empathetic way to her condition and how she's feeling.
Well, everybody, like, well, we want her to take as much time as she needs, you know,
absolutely,
to get better and to come back when she's good and ready, which is always.
But I've known people who've had, you know, cancer in the past, and the determination to come back, and they've come back far too quickly and taken on big challenges, and then the stress levels that they dealt with prior to it were far, you know, they couldn't deal with it, and so it's a dangerous game, and one that, you know, it's very delicate, and I think that people should really respect her privacy and respect how she wants to handle it.
Whenever I ask, they always say, well, it's up to her and her medical team, it's up to her and her doctors, which is the right approach. What's she really like? All right, because one of my favourite bits in the book, which I didn't know, was I believe it was on a hen party, a kind of private hen party, which you reported that she dressed up as pop star Cheryl Cole and performed a kind of karaoke song to her friends. She's a fun girl.
She's a fun girl. In her 20s. I mean, yes, she was quite serious. I mean, her dad used to. I love to see when she was at university. Her dad used to send her up newspaper clippings. I mean. That seems so long ago that, how people used to do things, but into areas of interest. But she's a very smart, sharp woman. But she's got a great sense of humour, and things like that sort of exemplify that. And I think she's, not only intelligent, but, I think she's somebody who I think has, as I say, a sense of humour that she went to various parties, and when they split up, she wasn't afraid of enjoying herself when they split up. And I think that sort of shocked William a little bit. He realised what a mistake he'd made and was desperate to win her back. She's hugely important to him, I think, because, if you've been together with somebody 20 years, ever since you're quite a young guy, and you listen to her advice. And I think she was probably the most important person going forward, and when she's Queen, will have a hugely important role and influence in him. But she's somebody who loves her kids. She loves the mayhem of the kitchen with the kids dancing around, and I think that what's important to her is her family first.
Yeah, 100%. Is there any, well, maybe something you didn't put in a book, but is there anything, on the job where you've had any interaction with Princess of Wales that really reveals her kind of personality?
Well, we've spoken, obviously you have as well. I've spoken to her on, I wouldn't say we're the best of friends, but, but the reality is I have spoken to her, and I think she's very careful with what she says to the press. I think she's not overly gushing. I won't say what we talked about, but it was pretty bland about school and things like that. But, I think that she's a lot more fun than the image that is presented. The image that's presented is a bit of an enigma, I think. But she's a lot more fun, and I think that we don't really see it because she doesn't really like to let her guard down.
No, we see it sometimes when she's asked to take part in sport. Do you know what I mean? We see
she
her
laughs a lot. I think anybody who laughs a lot is obviously somebody who's got that sense of humour, but someone who's at one with themselves, and I think she's certainly that. This has been an ordeal. The fact that, she's had to deal with this, and when she looked down, when she was talking about her children in that video, when she was revealing what the diagnosis was and what she was going to do, I thought it was terribly courageous, actually. I think it was very emotional, and the fact she'd broken the news to the King beforehand was very important. And you only have to look at the King when you see him. He absolutely adores he calls her his beloved daughter-in-law. He absolutely adores her because she's somebody who's she's not somebody who's looking to make dramas or problems. She's somebody who I think tries to find solutions, and that's quite important when we've had a lot of drama in the royal family quite recently.
I'm looking forward to seeing her come back, and I know there'll be acres and acres of pictures and stuff like that in the autumn when we do see her. But I'm looking forward to genuinely looking forward to seeing her doing her work. We went to Boston. William and Catherine were in Boston, and she had a job at Harvard where she went into Harvard, and there was because she's doing the project for children under fives, and she met loads of experts at Harvard. And I was always staggered by this. We had an engagement. We walked into a room. She's meeting all the experts. She was there fact gathering for her Royal Foundation project about the under fives. And she came in with a notepad that was filled up with questions and her own notes. So I was part of the roto. You went in. It's a 45-minute job. And she was speaking to all these experts, asking some really intelligent questions about her project and about the work that they were doing at Harvard in Boston, just outside Boston. And I was there for about 10 minutes and spoke to the press officer. I said, I think we should go. Because she was working. She was actually on a proper fact-finding mission for this project. And this is going to be her life's work. This is something that, she's captivated by. So we politely just said, OK, we'll leave you to it, because we just felt a bit rude listening to her working. It'd be good to see her, back actually kind of making a difference. Well,
I think she's been doing that behind the scenes. She's been dealing with all those projects, talking to all the patronages that she's involved with. We just haven't seen her. In that particular one, she's, someone said, I mean, you were there. I mean, but someone said to me, she's somebody that always seems to bring her A game to the table. And I think there's no doubt that if she wanted to do a PhD in this subject, she could probably do it tomorrow. So that's the sort of difference with her. She's a class act, I think.
Good. Let's talk about less of a class act. So this week, the front page there, that the Prince Andrew's in a bit of trouble again. This is rolling and rolling and rolling. So his security that was removed when he lost all his royal roles in disgrace because of Epstein and Virginia Giuffre. The King stepped in and said, well, you need a bit of security, I'll pay for it, here's an annual allowance. While you're living at Royal Lodge, I'll look after you. That security paid for by the King is going to leave in October. What does this mean for Andrew?
Well, I think he'll have to leave Royal Lodge. Bottom line is it needs a lot of static security. It's not a lodge, it's a palace. You know, it's too big for him and Fergie to live in. His argument is that he would have spent a lot of money on renovations and he's got a long contract signed off by the Queen for him to stay there. But the reality is he can't really afford it. He's not, you know, and also long term, what is the point? What's he trying to achieve? I don't really understand. The King, you know, is now the King. He's got his son, William, is the next in line. Andrew's now further away from any realisation. He's not a working royal anymore, and I think he's probably got to realise that he can't really go around saying I'm the Queen Elizabeth's second son. I'm very important. He's not that important anymore, and I think that if the King is going to be generous enough to offer him somewhere else to live, a much subsidised rent or even free, then he should take it.
Well, I may be devil's advocate here, but why does Andrew's just sitting in this house? All right, as unpalatable as it looks, it's a massive house that other things could be used for this property, and he's not a working royal. Absolutely, make a lot.
They could rent that. I
mean, why does he want him out? Why does the
number
King
one
want
there is that remember the old Prince of Wales, the Duke of Windsor, used to before he left the royal family, had a residence, didn't he? And that was then rented out to I think it was. The people that owned Fortnum and Masons, the Gaynor Weston family used to
Fort Belvedere, yeah.
So there is a chance that you could rent of Royal Lodge out to some billionaire, and it would then generate a lot of money for the royal family and for the Crown Estate. Now, I think the King's looking at this, and it's a bad look. The press won't leave this story alone. It's one that keeps coming back, I think mainly because his people are briefing on it. But the reality is he doesn't want to really leave, but there's going to be a point where he's exposed. And I think that financially, it's probably best for him to sort of just disappear. I think that he's seen around Windsor a lot. There are a lot of paparazzis around there. They're always taking photographs of him out riding on his horse or whatever he's doing. And the story, let's not get away from the fact that the Epstein story is, in terms of public relations, an absolute disaster for the King and the royal family, because it's just one of the worst things you can have. That's why he's no longer a working royal. Yet he doesn't seem to get it. And I think the King would just like him to sort of, go to Scotland maybe and play golf. Well,
you say go to Scotland. He's gone up to Scotland. No doubt he'll be having chats with the King up in Balmoral on the summer break. But where could Andrew go? We did a story 18 months ago, 2 years ago, saying that he was offered Frogmore. I don't think Prince William would really want him at Frogmore Cottage, because that's very close to Adelaide Cottage. What would you do with a problem like Andrew? Where'd you put him?
Well, he's a millionaire. He's got Aston Martins, he's got horses, he's got all these, and he's brought disgrace upon the royal family. I think really it's for him to realise that it's probably time, he's now retireable age, to just maybe go to Scotland and just disappear out of the scene, because he's not wanted. You've still got the Duke of Kent and the Duke of Gloucester working for the Crown. He's not wanted, and he doesn't seem to have got the message.
Yeah. Well, I think this is going to roll and roll. I think we don't know the implications of what's going to happen now the King is not funding the security, but we need to keep an eye on it, because
the thing is, Andrew's argument will always be that he's not been proven that he's done anything wrong. But if that's the case, why isn't he carried on as a working royal? Because in terms of PR, it looks bad. And in terms of PR, him having this huge palace in the shadow of Windsor Castle, it's not a good look.
No. Okay, right. We're nearly at the end, Rob, so we need to do our quick-fire questions, okay? This is the fun bit. We can be serious, however you listen to the questions. Right. What country would you send Harry and Meghan to for a tour?
That's a very good question. Where would I send them? Argentina. That'd be fun. That'd be fun for them. Yeah.
Well, she was in Argentina for a while, wasn't she?
Yeah. That maybe come true. That you never know.
Yeah. I was thinking Sussex.
I don't think that would work. I don't think that would go down too well with the good people of Sussex.
I think they went there. I think they've been there once, briefly. I think for sure.
I just wish they'd drop the titles and say we're not royal, and we're Americans now. But we'll have to see, because of course Donald Trump may say to Harry and Meghan, or Harry, you might have to, if he gets him to become president, he may say he's going to decamp somewhere else.
Yeah, Sussex. What has been your favourite royal tour, and why?
Royal tour, I always love going to Australia. I love to go in there actually with all the royals actually. But my favourite thing I ever did was go with the Duchess of York, as she was, up the Himalayas. We went to Nepal, and then we went to a place called Namche Bazaar, where, believe it or not, we managed to climb as high as that. It's the highest city in the world. It's called a city, but it's just a tiny gathering of dwellings. Took us 4 or 5 days to trek there. It was in the early 90s, mid-90s. Yeah, it was amazing. We had to carry our own sat phones with a group of people, and it was just something out of like an adventure. So in terms of, it wasn't really a tour, but it was a royal gig, and it was amazing.
Excellent. And what's your least favourite royal tour?
No, I've enjoyed most of them. I mean, I didn't enjoy the one to South Africa. I thought, although
this was the Sussex tour recently.
I didn't enjoy that. I thought that was really quite problematic. Everyone was getting upset, but tours are tours. I mean, I remember going to Thailand, and that was quite fun with the Queen in the 90s. But I mean, I like royal tours. Royal tours are quite fun, but I mean, I haven't already had a bad one, I don't think.
Oh, okay, all right. Yet. You haven't had a bad one yet. Yeah. Who should move into Royal Lodge?
Well, if they want it, maybe someone like the Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh, because they're going to carry on in the royal work in royal, and they can then probably let Bagshot park out to somebody else. And I think they're going to have a role going forward, even when Prince William is king. So maybe them. And
that would put them closer to the seat of power at Windsor. What about...
I think that William doesn't need to, because you see, he's got Admiral Hall, he's got Adelaide College, and he could probably take over and Kensington Palace. He could probably, if needs be, take over a wing at Windsor if he needs to.
Yeah, I'm told consistently when I ask that William and Catherine have no interest in Royal Lodge. But Beatrice or Eugenie, maybe they could come in and do some actual
Again, I think
work.
there need to be a royal that's working. And they're not going to be included in that game. I know a lot of people would like them to. They're lovely girls, but I think it's not going to be the situation. I personally think that the Edinburghs will have a role going forward, so maybe they should be able to do that, and it would make it, then if there's any public money spent on it, it's more understandable.
He's Ranger of the Great Park, of course.
He's done a very good job in supporting the King, and I think he's been excellent, really.
Good. Finally, look, it's summer holiday time for everybody. So, which member of the royal family would you most want to go on holiday with?
The problem is, would they want to go on holiday with me? And would I most like to go on holiday? I wouldn't mind going on holiday with the King to Romania and having a wander around there and listen to his philosophies and listen to his... he's a very humorous guy. I think he would be good fun.
That's actually really good. I'd like to go to Romania because it looks gorgeous, but he likes to go walking in the hills, doesn't he, on the mountains?
And maybe I would just maybe I'd just cook the tea or something.
You can meet him in the cafe.
No, but I mean, Romania, I've been to Romania with the King, and he's a different man when he goes there. He absolutely loves the place, and he's got the properties there that are rentable. I mean, if anyone wants to rent them out. And he's just very relaxed, and he loves the He loves the people, he loves the food, he loves the organic way of life. Yeah, I know he goes there quite regularly, well, he did, and one of his holiday companions was Earl Snowdon, his cousin. And yeah, he really enjoys it when he's there. So I think that would be quite fun.
That's a really good shout, actually. Yeah, I like that. Right, well, thanks, Rob. Time's flown by. We've covered absolutely everything I think that we can possibly talk about the Royals this week, so thanks for coming on.
My pleasure.
Right, well, thanks so much for watching. If you like the show, please do subscribe so you never miss an episode.